Peace to the planet. You know what it is. Adisa the Bishop. I am chilling. First of all, I missed you guys. I've been getting the best feedback from the story that we did on the Dagestani wrestlers, right? The man that's influencing the Dagestani wrestlers. That one man. Incredible, incredible. Also, the piece that I just did with David Frazee on men and finance, right? On getting your money right. Money Mondays will start again this Monday with episode 2 of David Frazee. Money Mondays is still on deck. It's going to be cool. That was recorded last week, and I can't wait to share it with you. And then Bobby Southworth, right? The BJJ and MMA fighter before Jiu Jitsu was cool. Bobby Southworth was out there with the legends doing it. And so that conversation is incredible. You'll learn more about BJ Penn, the UFC icon Dave Camarillo, who's coached so many incredible icons, including Cain Velasquez, free Cain all day. You know what I'm saying? And he's Mark Zuckerberg's coach, plus he did a bunch of the stuff in John Wick. So, I mean, come on, man. These are the people that Bobby Southworth came up with, and he has his own incredible legacy. Incredible feedback. Thank you. Continue to please share these podcasts. Also, on a lot of these video podcasts, I mean the audio. I'm talking about the audio podcast. Like it looks like when I post things, specifically on that Dagestani one, people just thought that was an article. They didn't realize it was something to be played. So please, when you see anything from me, look above the title. There's a player there. I had a lot of people being like, I didn't know there was a player there. And so I'm concerned that a lot of you that are coming in Substack are just reading the intro and thinking that that is the art. No. 99 times out of 100, it's either going to be audio or video. I got a new video camera coming next week. I'm going to have a whole bunch of new content on the other side of the paywall. I'll tell you that. A whole bunch of content behind the paywall. It's all going to be video. Some of it will be interviews. Um, and it will be things of a different nature than just stoicism and philosophy. But all of the stoic and jujitsu content that you're used to, it won't change. Shout out to Gentle Art Apparel. Look at the back of this. Look at this. Oh my God. Oh, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, yeah. Gentle Art Apparel. Why don't you go get some? You know what I'm saying? I got mine while in London, hanging out with my man Benjamin Glenn Phillips. If you haven't seen that interview with Benjamin Glenn Phillips, you're tripping and slipping. Um, he is the designer and brand manager for Gentle Art Apparel by Roger Gracie. Incredible gear. You need some. I got mine. Get yours. Holla at a scholar. You know how we do. And so now it's time to jump straight into this podcast. You know, if you're looking at Stoicism, one of the things I find on IG pages around Stoicism, and one of the things that I find from I don't be on TikTok that much and stuff like that, but there's always Stoic pages referencing Miyamoto Musashi. Miyamoto Musashi, for those that don't know, is a swordsman who's undefeated in Japan. He's one of the most decorated swordsman ever. He's one of the most notable Japanese swordsmen ever. He was undefeated in 61 duels. And so people often ask, was he a Stoic? Because he wrote a book called The Book of Five Rings. He also wrote another one called the Dokoro. And look, when I'm saying Greek things or Japanese things, like I'm a dumb American. So I'm trying to be respectful, but I probably get a lot of stuff wrong. So forgive me, right? But it was basically called like the way of walking alone. Okay. And so we're going to talk about these things, but we're also going to look at this idea. The question, was Miyamoto Musashi a Stoic, right? If some of you have seen Vagabond, you already know a little bit about Musashi. I'm talking about the manga series. If you have read the book Musashi by Ichio Shikawa, you already know a lot about Musashi, but that is more of a novel, right? It's based on his life, but it's more of a novel. And a lot of people have read the Book of Five Rings, especially in business. So I'm going to talk about his real life and answer the question, was he a Stoic? Right? The short answer is yes, but no. Yes, but no. Follow your boy. Oh, and I also want to just say, like, I've been talking about Miyamoto Musashi for many years. I'm not new to this topic. I'm not new to this subject. And so sometimes I can nerd out way harder than others can. And if I do that, I apologize in advance. Okay. So again, was he a Stoic? Yes, but no. Yes, in that so much of what he says does absolutely resonate as Stoic, and it does fall in line with so many of the Stoic virtues. But no, in terms of this reality, he wasn't raised in Greece. He didn't know about anything that had to deal with Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, Zeno, Cleanthes. Didn't know. So let's talk about his real life and his real death and how it aligns with Stoic things. So, a lot of times the problem we have is that we've turned, a 7th century Ronin. A Ronin is a self-taught samurai. Miyamoto Musashi did not have any teachers. And this is interesting, especially for someone who remained alive through a time when everybody fought to the death. Also, it's important to note that he didn't use a regular samurai sword. He basically used swords fashioned out of wood. He never used a blade. He also had a style that had two swords, two wooden swords. Um, and so I'm not going to get too deep into his actual fighting style and the way that he used weapons. I could get into that a little bit, but I'm going to stay away from it just so we can talk about him. So he was born in 1584. He was not born with the name Miyamoto Musashi. He was born in the Harima province, right? And he was born Shinmen Benosaki. And he was amazing. He he struggled in his youth because his mom died when he was a toddler, and his father was a very hardcore swordsman father. His father taught swordsmanship, and he was rough on little Benosaki, and he left, I think, at age 8 to go live with his uncle. 8 or 9. He went to go live with his uncle. There's one book in particular that says his father was yelling at him one day, and I think I could be wrong here. I could be wrong. I think he threw like a dart or a throwing star at his dad, and it just missed him. And his dad was like, "Yeah, you got to get out." So that was kind of how that went. Um, and so it's really interesting because he did his first duel at the age of 13. He killed a man at 13, a man named Arima Kihei. He was a Shinto swordsman and a samurai, and he put this thing up and it said, uh, I'm a swordsman. If you want the realness, I'm here. Sign up. And so little Musashi saw the challenge and filled it out. And so one day, apparently, his uncle is at the house chilling, and his uncle, in this moment, I'm not remembering exactly what his profession was, but I think he was a monk or some type of, Zen priest or something. So a messenger comes, knocks on the door. How's it going? Yeah. So Arima said he'll meet Benosaki at, 1 o'clock or whatever on Saturday. And he's like, what? And he's like, yeah, he filled out the thing. And so he's like, look, I got a little nephew. He's tripping. He's tripping out. Okay. Um, we've got to call this off. Like, he's a boy. This is no. So the guy's like, look, I tell you what, he's probably going to be understanding, but he also can't be made a fool of. Bring the boy, just re-explain what you explained to me to him, and then it will be in public. You know what I mean? It'll be squashed and we don't have to trip. And he's like, all right, cool. So he yells at young Musashi and he's like, see, man, you over here causing problems. Now I gotta go apologize to this dude because of you. Come on, man. So he does follow his uncle, but he follows far behind. And while he's walking behind his uncle, he sees a long stick, a long tree branch, and he breaks it off and he just kind of walks with it. So because his uncle walks up first, his uncle's like, "Hey, what's up? Yeah, I'm the guy from yesterday or a few days ago. Just wanted to let you know my nephew, he's tripping." All right, so we're just gonna chill this out. And he's like, "All right, I guess I did speak with the messenger. It's good. Da da da." And while that's happening, young Benusaki arrives and goes, "Are you Arima? Let's go." And the guy's like, "Was the uncle trying to play me, bro?" Like, so he's like, "All right, whatever, bro." So he gets his sword out. And a lot of people don't know how he won. I read a book that did let me know how he won. It involves grappling, and it's crazy. So they start off, they're circling, they swing at each other a few times and miss or whatever, and then they mutually charge. Like how you would see, like maybe like the Three Musketeers when you're like sword to sword, just kind of and they're right by each other, bro. This dude drops his own sword, which was unthinkable in swordsmanship. Drops his own sword, lowers his body, and basically double legs Arima Kihei down, gets on top of him, like in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, which would be known as the mount position, and he beat him with this wooden stick to death quickly. They say it was gruesome. I saw one thing that said he died vomiting blood after just being hit repeatedly in the throat and the face. And then it was over. One thing that I read said that like people seem to have been in stunned silence for just a few seconds because no one could believe what they had seen. And that was the beginning of Musashi's life as a swordsman. Again, he wanted to have 60, 61 duels, always undefeated, and he was self-taught. He is self-taught. He had no master, no school allegiance, pure focus on combat. Okay. His last noted duel was with a man named Sasaki Kojiro, master of the longsword, and he served the Hosokawa clan. Kojiro's signature move was called the Swallow's Reversal, uh, arising out of a devastating position. And when we're talking about swallow, we're talking about birds. I don't know if the real Sasaki Kojiro was capable of this, but in the in the Yoshikawa book, which is it's like it's always a coin toss between that book being my favorite novel, Musashi, and it's really thick like a phone book. It takes some time. Um, or Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressfield. Unbelievable pieces of work on both ends. But what the Musashi piece by Yoshikawa used to say was that he could, uh, if he was in sword's length of a swallow, a bird, when it moved to take off, he could cut it down. He was that fast in real life, they say. And so they had a really serious duel. Um, One thing that Musashi was known for was psychological warfare. Like he shut down entire schools of uh, of swordsmanship. There was the Yoshioka School of Swordsmanship. He challenged both brothers to a duel on separate occasions. One had their arm smashed by his wooden sword so irreparably he had to stop swordsmanship and became a monk. The other, um, Seijiro Yoshioka, I believe, basically set him up to get jumped with him and his friends because they were pretty nervous about his skill set. Um, Musashi showed up in like a little carried carriage, and he was sick. He said he had the flu, and but he didn't want to not show up. So he shows up in this little carriage, breaks out just slashing everybody, and he killed the brother. He killed the other brother. So he killed one brother, uh, irreparably wounded the other, and the Yoshioka school. And the Yoshiokas, I believe their father taught the shogun. He killed their whole sword lineage. This dude ended a lot of schools, ended a lot of lives. Um, and he studied nature deeply. I think that makes him very close to a Stoic because so much of what's in the Book of Five Rings is about nature and reflecting on how nature functions and functioning in alignment with it. So back to Sasaki Kojiro, they fought on an island called Ganryu Island in 1612. Um, Musashi showed up very late. There were lots of people waiting. Um, and he didn't pick the piece of wood he was going to use until like right before he got there. And then he started fashioning it and kind of like shaving it down on the way in. It was an old boat oar or something like that, and it was a little longer than Kojiro's long. He had a long sword that he used. Um, he was rowed in, like I said, an hour or two late for when they agreed to have the battle. Basically, he just walked up out of the ocean, had his sword. They squared off. He struck once, uh, right on top of his head with the oar with the oar sword, and basically cracked his skull. And that was it. He immediately got back into the boat and left because a lot of Kojiro's people were looking to kill him as well, because he was feared, right? This wasn't a guy who was winning by accident. Um, After that, he stops dueling and was like, I've done enough. You know what I mean? Um, and he died at 62. Right? He died at 62. This guy was amazing. I think that every man should study the life of Musashi. You should read the novel, but look into his actual life. One of the best books is just a book that an old student had given me called Miyamoto Musashi. I don't know if you can actually see this. Miyamoto Musashi by Kenji Tokitsu, right? And it has a new translation of the Book of Five Rings with commentary and annotations. Very powerful book right here. Really powerful book right here. But I've read many, more than once, many books more than once to really soak up this stuff. So I kind of want to talk about some of the Stoic frameworks that are akin to Miyamoto Musashi and the way that he saw life. So the dichotomy of control, right? Some things are up to us and some things are not. That's what Epictetus teaches, right? Um, and you know the virtues, right, of courage, justice, temperance, which is just balance, and wisdom, they all show up in Musashi's life journey. And what are both things really rooted in? Emotional discipline, right? That passions arise from false judgment, not from external events, right? And that you want to live in tune with nature, right? And pay attention to universal reason, uh, and how it it often governs almost all things if you're paying attention. Also, like amor fati, right? This idea that the Stoics had of loving your fate. Um, Musashi was really big about like not really living with regrets and like really making sure that you're um, at peace with whatever happens through the course of your life, right? Um, like Marcus Aurelius, they both did a lot of warfare. I think that it's important to know, like, and I've talked about this in the the warrior, what was it, the warrior scholar, Socrates, the warrior scholar episode that I did. Go listen to that, right? I talk about how Socrates was an actual warrior, that he fought as a hoplite in many campaigns, which meant lots of people died in the hands of Socrates. Lots of people died at the hands of Musashi. Lots of people died at the hands of Sun Tzu. Lots of people died at the hands of Napoleon and a lot of other people who we admire as strategists, but then we want to have this kind of understanding without facing what they faced. Obviously, I'm not telling you to go kill people. Obviously, I'm not telling you to go slash people, but find something that challenges you heavily and do it consistently. For me, it was jujitsu. For other people, it could be calligraphy. For other people, it could be yoga. For other people, it could be jogging. For other people, it could be uh, dance. Honestly, right? And what we're really talking about ultimately is self mastery through discipline, right? I'm speaking to you through a martial arts lens, but it doesn't have to be a martial arts lens. My main point is that these guys weren't soft. These were big idea guys because they had to have big ideas because they were facing death on a regular basis. Okay. Self mastery through discipline. Focus on what can be controlled. Can you work out today? Yes, then work out. Can you read more today? Yes, then read. Can you journal? Is there really time in your day to journal, or are you just saying that you don't have time because you're binge watching Stranger Things again? Right? And have indifference to external outcomes, wealth, reputation, even death. Become indifferent to it, right? Daily training. This is what Marcus Aurelius talked about, right? This is what Epictetus talked about, right? And then getting to the Book of Five Rings, which again is really a book strictly about swordsmanship, all right? Like it's not, I don't think it was meant to be used as it is. I think Musashi probably knew that it had different potential applications, right? But this is specifically for sword fighters. So when you read this, it's hard. I read it for the first time 20 years ago. It's very hard to understand how to take these ideas into your life. It's not like a one and done kind of book. You're going to have discipline with yourself. You're going to have to kind of explore certain aspects about life, and you're going to have to um, create your own conclusions and interpretations, right? So, he wrote this book between 1643 and 1645, the last 2 years of his life. Um, the five books, right, or the book of five rings or five spheres is earth, water, fire, wind, and the void, right? It's not as much a technical manual as it is a breakdown of principles, right? It's much more about principles than it is about specific techniques. He definitely tries to share some concepts, some technical concepts, but you don't get a lot of that. You get ideas, right? You get greater ideas, right? So from the Earth book, you're going to get this idea that Bruce Lee talked about, which is right, do nothing which is of no use, right? Pure economy of action. The Japanese had this phrase, this word, and I don't know what the Japanese name is, but the English expression is minimax, right? You want to use minimum output for maximum, results, right? And so that's in the economy of movement. That's how judo players move so cleanly and so lightly and like slam people into the earth like horrifically, right? Um, and that sounds a lot like Marcus Aurelius, right? If it's not right, do not do it. If it's not true, do not say it, right? Um, the way is in training, right? That laziness and a lack of consistency is always the door to mediocrity and an untimely death, whether you're on the battlefield or not. Okay. Um, you know, for Musashi, though, the criterion was effectiveness, not virtue, right? So you have to remember that, like, Musashi's living his own life. He's not leading a country. He's doing what he wants to do. In the water book, in the book of water, it's more about adaptability. And this is very, again, akin to Bruce Lee, right? That you should not have a favorite weapon. People often ask me, what is my favorite chess piece, right? Or what is my favorite move in jujitsu? What's my favorite position? And it sounds corny or it sounds super esoteric. But even though my nickname is a bishop, my nickname is a bishop because I love the bishop as a piece. I like to hit people at angles they don't expect to be hit on, especially because I'm a smaller human, right? Well, I'm not smaller now. I used to be really small. When I grew up, when I graduated high school, or rather when I dropped out of high school and got my GED, I weighed exactly 100 pounds on the dot. Exactly. I weigh double my weight right now, but I was 100 pounds. I was the 98-pound weakling for most of my young adult life. True. And I loved bishops, right? I love hitting people at angles, both on the chessboard and in life with my own ideas. Um, and This idea of not having a favorite weapon is important because people quickly figured out that if they could mess with my bishops, if they could take my bishops or pin my bishops down, I didn't have many options. And so I had to adapt my game, right? I had to adapt my game and get good with knights, although I'm still trash with them. Get better with using, rooks and bishops together, right? Using pawns and knights together, like figuring out, right? And then eventually what happens is you don't have a favorite piece anymore because the piece you want is that your favorite piece becomes the piece that you win with. Period. Right? It's the same way in jujitsu, right? Whatever my preferences are, if I have an opportunity to win from the guard, I'll take it. Mount, I'll take it. Side control, take it. Knee on stomach, take it. Back, mount, take it. Turtle, take it. Whatever I can get, I'm going to try to win from wherever I find myself. But it takes time to get there. So it's okay to have favorites in the beginning, just don't come over attached, right? Musashi said that water takes the shape of its container. It has no fixed form, right? He tells you about his five basic stances, but talks about their infinite applications, right? Um, you know, uh, we have to be mindful of these kinds of things if you do martial arts, and even if you don't do martial arts, it's important to have an open head and heart that is not limited by dogmas that have been given to you or dogmas you create in your own mind because you think you know so much, right? No matter how much you know, there's just so much more you don't. And that's anybody, right? Especially me, the high school dropout. Um, the Fire book is about combat reality, right? He said, in single combat, you much appreciate the enemy's strength and use proper timing. Anybody who knows me when they deal with me, timing is one of the phrases that I use to define jujitsu. I say that I'm sorry, that Brazilian jiu-jitsu is a fighting style rooted in logic, leverage, and timing. Logic, meaning like we never do anything just because. In certain traditional martial arts, they may have a movement that people do. They'll say, "Hey, why do we do this?" And they'll say, "Oh, that's the way the master taught us." They don't really know why, but they do it out of reverence to the master and getting the style. But in jiu-jitsu, we don't have that. There's a reason why. 99 times out of 100, your instructor should know why they grip this way as opposed to that. Well, if you grip this way, it's actually weaker and the guy can do this, right? Well, why do we want to be here instead of there? Well, you want to be here because you're safer from becoming off balance. If I'm here, you see, boop, I get turned over. Logic, leverage, right? The logic leads you into the leverage, right? My hips are here. I can elevate them and turn to my left or right, right? By grabbing the arm at the base of the wrist as opposed to the middle of the forearm, I have more control because of X, Y, or Z, right? And then timing, when to do it. My instructor Gumby, who gave me my black belt, said that the right move done at the wrong time is still the wrong move, right? And that learning the technical bits and pieces of a move is important. But once you understand those pieces, it has to be timing. In the end, even though timing is the last element, it is the most important, right? And so that's where this timing thing comes in here, right? Because we're dealing with swords, right? Creating pockets of space. Um, and manipulating that space to fit your blade in between or your attack or your grip or your defense, right? Your reversal, right? Also, I love this idea. I still remember when my friend who was also read it, we were going back and forth and he started mirroring my stance and I was completely confused by it. He's like, "Man, I got that out of the Book of Five Rings. Musashi said to become your enemy." And so sometimes you can confuse your opponent just by taking the same stance they do. And that can be technical, psychological, verbal. It's a thing, right? Um, and so, in the Fire book, he talks about timing as everything. You do it too early or too late, it means death. And it really does. It really does. Look at boxing, right? Someone overextends, bop, 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 bop. Rib cage, stomach folded, liver kicked in, right? You extend too far, all bad. You extend too little, you don't really connect with your target at all, right? Or you don't have the impact you hoped. No good, right? And so, Stoics emphasize timing too, right? But for moral action, not a tactical victory, right? So it's still got Stoic applications and Stoic correlation, right? Then you have the Wind book, right? The critique of other schools, right? And that's where he breaks down and dismantles a lot of contemporary martial arts traditions at the time. Um, he even talks about some schools emphasize the strength of the longsword. That's what Sasaki Kojiro had ascribed to, and he died holding that thing in his hand, right? Um, and he was really about pure pragmatism, right? What works under actual conditions, and that's what MMA and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu really and Jeet Kune Do want you to understand. What works when it's real? What works when it's real? Right? And this is where a lot of traditional martial arts fall to the wayside a lot of times, right? Because they didn't adapt. They hold to what their master taught. They don't innovate. They don't remix, and then they fall victim to those that remix and innovate, right? And that's any warrior, any warfare, any fighting style. If you don't elevate and innovate a little bit, you're gonna get messed up. And so the dogma, I was telling my good friend Professor Stefan Zoll from Black Lab Jiu Jitsu in London, I said, dogma almost always kills the beauty of most things. The dogma of most organized religion is what kills the hearts of the people who had faith, right? You have to be aware of dogma. You have to keep some space for yourself to express yourself spiritually in any given space. It's the same for martial arts, right? Um, basically what Musashi taught in that particular book is that you can't have too much reverence for tradition when that tradition gets you killed. How many boxers got folded by jiu-jitsu dudes, right? Like this guy was telling me the other day, hey man, these dudes that love boxing said that nobody in jiu-jitsu can beat a good boxer. And I couldn't stop myself from giggling, trying to keep myself together. And I said, what's crazy about boxers is they act like the ones that don't like jiu-jitsu. I'm not talking about all boxers. I love boxers. In fact, there was a great boxer in my family. He was known as the Brown Panther. His name was Harry Wills. Harry Wills. How good was Harry Wills? He was so good that legend has it that Jack Johnson didn't want to fight him and gave him money to not fight him so that he could stay world champ and go on and do his thing. I'm just telling you what history tells me in my lineage. That's what they say. I come from warriors. I'm not playing. My point is, you can't have too much reverence for tradition, right? Fighting styles. Oh, I can't evolve. The boxer dudes. I'm like, in boxing, what happens when two boxers get tired? What do? They grab each other. They hug each other. And they also hug each other to wear each other out. So I said, if boxers can get a hold of each other just while boxing, if my whole fighting style is grappling, why can't I grab them then? He was like, oh man, that makes a lot of sense. I was like, I know. All you got to do is Google BJJ versus boxing and then go, yikes. Anyway, I do love boxing. It goes without saying. You know what I'm saying? Like, seriously, I love boxing. And then you have the Book of the Void, formless form. The void is where nothing exists. Openness like space, actual space, outer space. Pay attention. The void is where nothing exists. This is a thing that transcends technique through understanding principle. I once talked to a world champion and he told me he was having a tough time with this guy where he ended up winning. But he said, before I saw the fight, he said, so once he started coming at me, I just wasn't there. I said, I get it. He goes, no, do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I wasn't there. I said, I get it. What he's talking about is the Japanese concept of mushin or no mind, right? No precognitive responses, absolute presence, and just collapsing yourself into that space. The difference? Stoics use reason to regulate emotion. Musashi transcends the reason slash emotion binary through presence and immediate action in the moment, right? So the critical distinction really is that Musashi's goal is perceiving without the delay of thought, right? And the Stoic goal is thinking correctly to feel appropriately and then take the right action. Musashi was like effectiveness in the particular moment, right? Effectiveness in the particular moment is what it's about. Stoics seek to have virtue or connection to the core four virtues, right? In all moments, right? Both require brutal self-honesty, right? Um, let's talk about Musashi, the end of his life. So he got really sick. And so there's this thing called anecdotes about the deceased master. Uh, and they say the master fell sick after arriving in Higo in Osakawa, especially from the beginning of 1645. He was unable to swallow food, and several doctors tried to treat him. The master knew that he had developed an incurable ailment and refused to take medicine. But on the instance of Lord Hosokawa, he yielded from time to time. One day, one of the principal vassals, named Sawamura Daigaku, visited him and said, after examining the master's condition, take care of yourself with rest. I'm sure you will heal completely. Once the visitor had left, the master said, Daigaku is an adept who has considerable experience of war. Those words of his do not suit him. I don't know why he said that. I wonder if he was just like, because I'm fixing to die. You know what I mean? Like, you're not talking like a G right now. So he said that he preferred to spend his last days in the mountains, hiding my body from the sight of others. A week before his death, Musashi composed uh, The Way to Be Followed Alone, right? He died on the 19th. He died on the 19th of the fifth month in 1645, in the presence of his adopted son, Iori. Some authors say that he died at home. Others say that he had himself carried to Regando, uh, where he waited for death in seated meditation. They say that he seated himself with one knee vertically raised, holding the sword with his left hand and cane in his right, and he died in that posture at the age of 62. They set up a tomb on Mount Iwato on the order of the Lord. Um, it's very powerful. In 1654, 19 years after his death, Miyamoto Iori had a monument raised in his memory in the town of Kokura. The text on this monument is a funeral eulogy to Musashi. It is known by the name of the Kokura Hibun. Um, this guy was amazing. Like, he really has influenced me probably more than any other martial artist, maybe even including Bruce Lee. Maybe even including Bruce Lee. But I'm not sure, dude. It depends. That's a photo finish in terms of influence, right? So let's talk a little bit about the Dokoro, the path of aloneness, right? Basically, he wrote it 1 week before his death. It was given to his main student, Terao Magonojo, and has 21 precepts. Okay. One, accept everything just the way it is. He was about absolute reality, right? Two, do not seek pleasure for its own sake. Three, do not, under any circumstances, depend upon a partial feeling. He wanted you to get into yourself and know exactly how you saw things, because he believed that half commitment always gets you killed, right? Think lightly of yourself and deeply of the world. right? Don't let your ego get over you too much, right? This whole idea of ego dissolution, right, is important in the way of the warrior, and it is also for the way of the Stoic. Be detached from any desire your whole life long. That's much easier said than done. But again, it's important. It's an important thing to try and reach toward. Um, I've been working and I will be working this year on more detachment emotionally and psychologically and spiritually. Um, this other idea, do not regret what you have done. I think that is different than not taking accountability for what you've done, right? Take accountability, say the apologies, change your actual consistent behavior, right? And that's why you don't regret. Not because you're overlooking it, not because you're trying to push your flaws or bad things you know you have done to the side, but you're taking it into account, you're taking yourself into account, into atonement, and you're moving forward. And that's what should be removing your regret, right? Never be jealous. This is a huge thing that people struggle with. I was just talking about this um, in on my IG page, right? About people who are jealous of you. Sometimes who are sadly people who are supposed to be friends and family, and they don't support what you do, they don't back what you do, they don't promote anything, right? They just watch because somehow you doing you amplifies within themselves what they're not doing in their own life, and they regret you for it, which is pathetic and strange. um but never be jealous, right? Epictetus taught if you want something, you become a slave, enslaved to it, which is true. I've seen people have diseased minds in pursuit of things um, abnormally. It's sad to watch. Never let yourself be saddened by a separation. This one is not easy for me. This one cuts deep. He lived alone, and so he was able to be okay with separation from almost anyone. I'm not there yet. Um, and for him, I think he saw attachment as a supreme vulnerability, right? And so, you know, this other one, resentment and complaint are appropriate neither for oneself nor others. This was huge, right? Like the Stoics were really big on not complaining, and so were the Confucians. Um, and so, I want you to think about this idea that, the Stoics engage with society as rational, uh, as a virtuous agent. Musashi had radical self-reliance through strategic detachment. Radical self-reliance through strategic detachment. All right. Um, you must understand, he said, that there is more than one path to the top of the mountain, right? There's more than one way to get you to your goal, but you actually have to do it, right? You actually have to do it. And also remember that, this guy was an artist as much as he was a warrior. And I've been trying to get more men to understand this part, right? That, he was a calligrapher, he did sculpture, and he was a dancer. He was a dancer. And so it's so hard. Like I have a whole talk that I do about Bruce Lee, about Musashi, and the role of dance between them. He did Japanese no dancing, right? It's a very precise, stylized element of theater in Japan, and it requires what they call kata, form, ma, timing and space, total embodiment of presence, right? And no one really knows how he learned to be such a great dancer. But if you understand how much he loved dance, you understand how much Bruce Lee loved dance, you understand the role of rhythm and how they fought. It sounds esoteric. It's really not a joke. In fact, I was just speaking with my man Dan over at the Immersive Podcast. He and I were leaving my visit on the Immersive Podcast. The Immersive Podcast actually should drop in about 2 weeks. That's on YouTube, and you should get down with them, Alex and Dan. Anyway, me and Dan were leaving the podcast talking about dance, and we both decided that we were going to try to learn some form of dance this year. We were challenging ourselves as accountability partners to learn some form of dance to help us in our martial arts, right? And just open us up, try something new, get a sense of rhythm. I cannot dance at all. Anybody who really knows me knows how frighteningly unrhythmic I can be, or am. And so, again, Musashi was a painter. Um, he did scrolls, right? He did calligraphy. He did wooden sculpture. Um, and so, like, how beautiful is that, right? They even say that he made some had did some metal craftsmanship and made some sword guards, right? The thing is, I'm trying to help you understand that he doesn't have to be an actual Stoic. He doesn't have to be an actual Stoic. If you live a life like this, you tend to see similar things, right? So you have, let's say, Marcus Aurelius, you have Epictetus, you have Seneca. They lived in totally different times than Miyamoto Musashi, totally different culture than Miyamoto Musashi. Musashi grew up in a totally different time and culture than Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee grew up in a totally different time and culture than, say, Hickson Gracie or Hodger Gracie. And yet they sound almost frighteningly alike in their perspective and execution of their techniques. They have very similar mindsets. In fact, I'll tell you something. When I met Hodger briefly through my boy Ben at the and Professor Mauricio when I was at the Hodger Gracie Academy in London, Hammersmith. Shout out to all of you. Thank you for being so kind to me when I came to train and sharing so much wisdom in that time there. After class, Hodger was working on wooden swordsmanship. I'm gonna include a picture. You probably see it in this description. I'm gonna put it in the description. Um, but you know, these mindsets are not separate. They're not, and I hope you understand what um, what the value of Miyamoto Musashi's life and times were. I encourage you to get the Book of Five Rings. I encourage you to get this book on Miyamoto Musashi, right? It's by Kenji Tokitsu. And I deeply encourage you, like I deeply encourage you to learn as much as you can about Musashi, especially if you do martial arts. But even if you don't, his life is important to know. His work and his writings are priceless to the planet. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. I have more. Again, I'm getting a new camera coming up soon. Next week, gonna start dropping new content. Um, oh, and Half Gracie will be at the Santa Clara Academy this Wednesday at 6 p.m. If you're a member of the Half Gracie Academy, it's free. If you are not, it's $50. He came last week to the San Jose Academy, and you can ask Professor Dorian or Professor Sarge or Professor Eric or Professor Tim. It was unbelievable. Half Gracie is a cut above for a reason. And if you're smart enough to show up on Wednesday, you'll know part of why that reason is. All right. I'm out of here. Stay blessed. Please subscribe if you haven't already. If you are a subscriber, please consider being a donating contributor to this podcast. And I guarantee you that once I get this new camera and I start rolling out the next stuff, it's going to be pretty intense, and beautifully informative. I already have some other guests lined up for this new section, and I can't wait to share with you. Have a very blessed weekend. Stay strong, stay blessed, and stay stoic. Until next time, peace to the planet.